Because the emergency fund is not some magical number that you save up till you get there, and now you can just peck at it every time something happens until you get down to zero and then start all over again. No, that's a dumb idea. What's up, everyone, and welcome to the channel. My name is Diamond, and I want to share with you some tips I learned along the way that's kept me from draining my emergency fund and ensuring that that thing is there, intact, ready when I need it. So if you've struggled to build or maintain an emergency fund, you found the right video, and I hope this helps. If you haven't done so already, be sure to click the subscribe button so that you can become part of the community. Most people like to save the best for last, but we're jumping right in here. The first tip is you have to get used to having money. Now, I know what you're thinking, but seriously, think about it. If I gave you $10,000, what would you do with it? If I gave you another $10,000, what would you do with it? And how many times would I have to give you $10,000 before you said, I'm not going to do anything with it. Just going to let it sit and it'll be there. That's what an emergency fund is. And if you're like me, I always have a list that's ever growing of things that I want to do with money or things that I could do with money. And the emergency fund is a pile of money that could fund some of these things. But we have to understand that that emergency fund is there to cover us just in case the worst happens. So in order to keep it intact, this idea of having money just sit is something that you have to get used to. And if this is the first time that you've built an emergency fund, this may very well be the first time that you have a pile of money that's not directly connected to some type of financial goal or something you're trying to achieve. The one thing to look forward to is that the more money you accumulate, the easier it becomes to sit on a pile of money. Now, I know this may not make sense, but it's true. The second tip that helped me keep my emergency fund intact was to write a list of what qualifies as an emergency. And that was me sitting down, writing down all the bad stuff that could happen to me. And if that's too dark for you, then just write a list of all the things that's not an emergency. But this list has been very crucial for me because it's something that I can lean on when my emotions get the best of me. Because when an emergency happens, it's pretty normal for your emotions to also get triggered. And when your emotions is running high and you start making financial decisions based off emotion and not off logic and reason, you're going to make a mistake. And that'll kill your emergency fund. An example would be you wreck your car, it's total, and you receive a check from the insurance company. But instead of going and buying a car that you had that was about the same value, you decide to go out and buy a car that's double. And you use part of your emergency fund to cover it because you justify it using emotion. So that's why having this list is super important. It's a way to keep you in check regardless of what's going on around you. Because you've already wrote this list. You know you can listen to yourself and you know what state of mind you was in when you wrote it. So it's just one of those checks and balances for you to keep your emergency fund intact. Without this third tip, not only would I not have kept my emergency fund intact, I wouldn't have been able to build it in the first place. And that's, you have to use a budget. And I know that may make your blood boil, but call it a spending plan if you will. But this budget is important because what the budget allows you to do is to forecast things that's coming. How many times have something hit you at the last minute and caused you to tap into your emergency fund or some other resource because it's important, you had to do it, and I didn't have a choice. I didn't even see it coming. But why not? It was walking straight towards you for 2 months in slow motion. You just wasn't paying attention. This has happened to me several times, and having a budget has made this almost go completely away. Things still pop up, but not nearly as much as when I wasn't using my budget right. So having a budget is going to help you forecast those things that's coming and make sure things aren't blindsiding you and making you tap into your emergency fund. A budget is very, very crucial, not only to keeping your emergency fund intact, but building it in the first place. So get on a budget. The fourth tip is keep your emergency fund close, but not too close. It might be a bad idea to keep your emergency fund in your primary checking account. But at the same time, you don't want to put it so far out of touch that it becomes difficult for you to get to it if you need it. Because remember the very first tip, we have to get used to having money. Because at the end of the day, this money is yours and you can do with it whatever you choose to. So I was never trying to hide my money, but as I was going through this and learning these different tips, what I wanted was the money at an arm's length distance, but close enough where my fingertips can still reach it and I can grab it if I need it. The way I did this was I used the online high yield savings account. And this had two benefits. One, It put it far enough out of touch that I couldn't emotionally spend any of it. But at the same time, I'm able to earn more interest every month versus if I left it in my primary bank's savings account. And I understand that an emergency fund is not a vehicle to build wealth with. The interest that I'm gaining is not going to make me a millionaire. In fact, the very idea of having an emergency fund and having cash sitting in a savings account is actually costing me money, because had I invested that money out in the market, my return would be much greater than any interest rate that any bank is going to offer me on any savings account. But the truth is, and the way I feel about it, is that by having that emergency fund in place, that's my protection, so that when life hit me, because I know something's going to happen, and when that something comes, I am able to take care of it, and I can leave all my other monies that's out in the world invested in making money for me. I can leave that alone, and I can handle whatever life throw at me. To wrap this up, the fifth tip that I have for you sucks. And this is that when you spend your money out of your emergency fund, even if it's a qualified emergency, you have to replace that money. And it's great to have the money available to cover whatever you need to cover, but it don't feel good to spend that money. And it surely don't feel good to go back to the budget and have to replace that money. But that's what you have to do, because the emergency fund is not some magical number that you save up till you get there, and now you can just peck at it every time something happens until you get down to zero and then start all over again. No, that's a dumb idea. The emergency fund is a living, breathing account. As things happen, you take care of it, and then you replenish that money. That way your emergency fund stays intact, is there when you need it, and you're not draining your emergency fund. These are the things that help me keep my emergency fund intact, and I hope they help you too. Until next time, I'm Diamond. Peace.